For starters, the Houthi are a terrorist organization funded by Iran, and on the very first day that Joe Biden entered the White House, it was a day one initiative of Joe Biden. He took the Houthi off the list of terror organizations. We're now at war with the Houthi, who are a terror organization, and Joe Biden has not put them back on the terror watch list. If the United States puts the Houthi on a terror watch list, globally it allows countries to seize their assets, freeze bank accounts, monitor and regulate the flow of goods into Yemen. The Biden administration got rid of that, and they haven't put them back on. It has allowed the Houthi to rearm more easily. It's not that they wouldn't rearm, it's that he's allowed them to rearm more easily now. He hasn't put them back on. And weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks of press release after press release after press release, the Houthi have entrenched their positions, doubled down, and only finally have we engaged the Houthi rebels. Now, let me explain the geography of this for you. It's worth you understanding the lay of the land here. We're talking obviously about the Red Sea, the southern end of the Red Sea. The southern end of the Red Sea goes through the Straits of Bab al-Mandeb. And on one side, you have Eritrea and Djibouti. And then you have Somalia. On the other side, you have Yemen. And the narrowest point is Bab al-Mandeb, flowing from the Red Sea into the Gulf of Aden. Now, this is important because there is an island, Param Island, and then there is a peninsula that juts out from Yemen, and the Houthi control that territory and have drones and rockets that they can fire at the ships. And it's not a great distance. It is not a great distance. There are also pirates in the area, and the pirates have largely disappeared as the Houthi have armed up. So the American military, the Australian military, the British military, and now you've got Iranians there and Saudis there, Yemeni forces there, and others. They're all crowded into this tiny area of water. And there are cargo ships, and most of the cargo ships now have diverted. They're now sailing across the Indian Ocean, around Cape Horn in Africa, and up the west side of Africa. It adds 15 to 20 days of travel for the ships traveling nonstop 24/7. They don't stop at night. They keep driving, or they keep sailing. So 24/7 adds 15 to 20 days extra to get around Africa, as opposed to just going through the Red Sea, which they can't do. This became a major issue, and the United States' initial gut response was send press releases saying, cut it out, you stop, you bad boys, you stop. And the Houthi read that as weakness and escalated their attacks. While the Houthi were escalating their attacks, it gave Iran time to send ships, military naval vessels from Iran, to quote unquote observe what was going on, potentially rearm and supply the Houthi more regularly and easier. Well, we have finally, in a coordinated attack, gone after them. The U.S. and British militaries, with assists from Bahrain and Australia, Qatar and the United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia, all piled in. You need to understand the Houthi rebels in Yemen have been launching not just an effort to take over Yemen and establish a stronghold favorable to Iran, but also to go after Saudi Arabia. They've bombed territories within Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates with missiles. They've attacked oil refineries and others. And why? So in the geopolitical sphere, there used to be two countries there. There was North Yemen and South Yemen. When I was a kid, North Yemen and South Yemen, North Yemen was communist, South Yemen was favorable to the West. And they were always clashing with each other. After the fall of the Soviet Union, the Soviets were no longer there to prop up North Yemen. The countries united. Well, Iran wants more anchors in the Middle East. You have Iran. They've propped up Hezbollah in Lebanon. They have worked with Hamas, though they're at religious differences. They've come to terms with Hamas. Now they have worked with the Syrians, and they're also now working with the Houthi because they want to surround Saudi Arabia. Why? Because Iran is still Islamic. Even though they're Shiite instead of Sunni, they're Islamic, and they also value Mecca. If Saudi Arabia was more favorable to Iran, there would be greater access to Mecca. And Saudi Arabia is hostile to Iran. So you surround them, you destabilize them, and maybe, just maybe, if you're lucky, you overthrow the Saudis. You destabilize the region and you build a larger Persian empire again. And then you go after Israel and bring about the apocalypse. So Iran has been funding the Houthi to launch a coup in Yemen and destabilize Yemen, and then to provide a bulkhead for the Iranians to get in and begin to agitate against the Saudis. We've been pushing back. The Trump administration pushed back aggressively. The Trump administration really aggressively went after the Houthi, put them on the terror list. We're beginning to aid the Saudis in their efforts to fight them. This is something that Biden walked back from very quickly when he got in. We were helping the Saudis go after the Houthis, and then Biden came in and said, "Oh, you Saudis, you're being so mean. You're being nasty to them. You're the bad guys here, Saudi. You Mohammed bin Saud. Oh my gosh, you're so bad. Look at what you did to Jamal Khashoggi. We're not gonna help you. You must be the bad guys. The Houthi must be, well, the Houthi, they're just misunderstood rebels. No, they're bad." So we struck 60 targets at 16 sites in Yemen, including command and control nodes, munitions depots, launching systems, production facilities, and air defense radar systems. We told them it was coming. We sent them a couple hashtags and a press release. They had plenty of time to bunker down. This is the most bizarre part of this. The Biden administration is like, yes, we slayed, Queen, we slayed. You sent out a press release and said, hey, we're going to attack you in 12 hours. They literally sent a press release announcing pending airstrikes. Who does that? There's no surprise attack. It's hey guys, run for cover. We're coming for you. Let's play hide and seek. I mean, the Biden administration, they decided they wanted to tickle them. They wanted to look tough while giving them a heads up. Okay, we're going to strike here, so you guys don't have anything there. Just we want to look tough for the world. That's literally what the Biden administration did. They sent out a press release and said, we're going to attack in the next few hours. Good Lord. Textbook example of how you don't proceed. But that's how they proceeded. Now, what is notable is the coalition. It was Australia, Great Britain, the United States, and Bahrain. Bahrain is a huge military ally of the United States in the Middle East. The Fifth Fleet of the United States is housed in Bahrain. We have military bases there and in the United Arab Emirates. We have outposts in Saudi Arabia and Kuwait. Qatar is the problem. Qatar is purportedly our ally, but Qatar has been trying, much like the Biden administration, to realign its posturing in the Middle East, and they've been very friendly to Iran. But there's a problem now. The Taliban in Afghanistan and the Iranians are no longer getting along. Remember, there was that terror attack in eastern Iran last week, and it was by ISIS. The Taliban have allowed ISIS to set up shop in Afghanistan. They've left them alone. They don't particularly care for each other, but they leave each other alone. And now ISIS has a base of operations in Afghanistan to attack Iran. Well, guess who has great relationships with the Taliban? Qatar. Qatar, trying to improve its relationships with Iran, looks like deals off there, because Qatar helped us in this strike, and that seems to be a signal that Qatar's days of making kissy face with Iran are over. Qatar's not our friend, by the way. Qatar, we should deal with them more forcefully, and we don't. Qatar's trying to play all sides. You should not trust the Qataris. But that Qatar, the UAE, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia all got together on this. Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, the United Arab Emirates, they don't like Qatar anymore because, again, Qatar has been making kissy face with both the Taliban, which they all hate, and Iran, which they all hate. And Qatar came in on this coalition on the backside of it. Now, they're downplaying their involvement, but they absolutely were involved, which means they see the Houthi threat as a big deal too. Keep in mind, the Houthi have targeted the UAE and they've targeted Saudi Arabia. So they came in together with the Brits, who used to be the colonial governing power of that area. They all have ties to, this is one of the wild things. I don't mean to get off on these tangents for you, but just so you understand the history here. After the fall of the Ottoman Empire, the Middle East was basically given to Great Britain by the global powers. So it was Great Britain that oversaw the Ottoman territory called Palestine. The United Arab Emirates was a territory of Great Britain. Lawrence of Arabia, of course, set up shop with the Saudis. They had great ties to Britain. They maintained their level of independence, but they had to deal with the Brits also in Egypt. And all of these countries tend to not only get along, they get along with the Brits, as opposed to, look at the French, the Belgian, and the German post-colonial powers. All the colonists hate them because the Brits, the Germans, the Belgians were so terrible. The Brits were at least civilized. The Brits introduced democracy. And so all of these former colonies of Great Britain actually have great ties back to Great Britain and through Great Britain to us now. And they've all gotten back together to take on the Houthi now. That's actually a very good thing. But it comes in spite of Joe Biden, not because of Joe Biden, because none of these countries wanted him to take the Houthi off the terror list. He doesn't get credit for this because he kind of fell into it by force because of what the Houthi were doing. All of these countries convinced Donald Trump to put the Houthi on the terror list, and Joe Biden got rid of it, much to their protests. He's ruined our relationship with Saudi Arabia, and the only thing that's put us all back together right now are the Houthi terrorists and the Iranian threat. At least it's something. But we got to find better ways to rebuild these bridges in the Middle East. In the meantime, at least we finally decided to get tough on the Houthis, even if we sent them a press release and told them it was coming, so they had time to hunker down. And you know what that's probably going to do? Make the situation worse.